Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. I'd like to welcome everybody here on this beautiful morning as we celebrate with Saul on his becoming bar mitzvah, and we celebrate Shabbat in the middle of the festival of Sukkot. All these wonderful things happening at the same time, and we're glad you're here to celebrate and worship with us. I ask you, especially for those who've never seen this book before, to take the prayer book. The prayer book is called Mishkan Tefillah. Take it and open it to page 192. You'll notice on this page, actually we use the two facing pages as a single unit. So on one page you'll see Hebrew. For those who read Hebrew, you know which page that is. And for those who don't read Hebrew, you'll also know which page that is because you can't read it. Next to the Hebrew is the English transliteration, meaning it's the Hebrew words in English letters. So if you want to follow along or try to read when we're reading or singing Hebrew, you look at the transliteration if you don't know Hebrew. Below the Hebrew and transliteration is a transliteration. That means it is the translation. That is the accurate translation of the Hebrew prayer. On the left-facing page, generally, are one or two readings of a creative prayer on the same theme as the Hebrew. Sometimes we read one of those. So we usually read one of the different parts of the two page, and as soon as we finish, you turn the page. If we move more than one page at a time, we will announce the page. We encourage you to participate as much as you can, as much as you feel comfortable doing, and that's both with the reading prayers and also the Hebrew and the chanting. If you know the Hebrew prayers, and you can chant along and use the words. If you don't know the words and you still want to sing or chant la la. But the thing we ask you is not to accompany the music, meaning do not have anything in your pocket or your purse that will go off with an electronic or digital sound during the service. Please check now to make sure that doesn't happen. I have a terrible glare that I give to people when I hear that happening. So you don't want that. It melts right through you. The other thing we ask people not to do in the sanctuary during the service is take any pictures using the phone or anything like that. If you want to take a picture during the service, you have to go out of the room where the photographer is standing behind a window over there, and you're allowed to take a picture from there. After the service, because this is a lovely sanctuary, you are allowed to take pictures here. So we encourage you to participate, and now we're going to begin with the opening prayer, Ma Tovu.
Ma tovu alecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael, va'ani baruch hasdecha, abo beitecha, eshtachave, achol kodshecha, meiratecha. Adonai ahavti me'on beitecha, umkom mishkan kevodecha, ve'ani ashtachave ve'echra'a, avrecha lifnei Adonai osi, ve'ani tafilati, lecha Adonai et ratzon, Elohim baruch hasdecha, aneni be'emet nitzacha.
We turn the page and read together. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe. With divine wisdom you have made our bodies, combining veins, arteries, and vital organs into a finely balanced network. Wondrous maker and sustainer of life, were one of them to fail, how well we are aware, we would lack the strength to stand before you. Blessed are you, Adonai, source of our health and strength. Baruch atah Adonai, rofei kol basar, machli la'asot. We continue with the next page with the singing of Elohai. Please turn to page 223.
You shall always be praised, great and holy God, our sovereign in heaven and on earth. Songs of praise and psalms of adoration become you, acknowledging your might and your dominion. Yours are strength and sovereignty, sanctity, grandeur, and glory always. We offer our devotion, open our hearts in acclamation. Praised are you, sovereign of wonders, crowned in adoration, delighting in song, eternal majesty. Yitkara v'yitkara shemei rabba, v'almadira chirutei, v'almich malchutei, b'chayechon u'vyomechon, Uchahai Techot Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala, Uzman Kari, V'meru Ame, Yehesh Merabba Mevora, Leolam Olemaya, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitpa'ar, v'yitromam, v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar, v'yitalah, shemei dekudesha, rehu, leola min kol birchata, v'shirata, tushbechata, v'nechamata, damiran b'yomeh, v'meru amen. Please turn to page 226, and if you are able, please rise for the Baruch. Baruch Hu Adonai HaMevorach, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach, Leolam Va'ed. Praise Adonai, to whom praise is due forever.
Praise be Adonai, to whom praise is due now and forever.
In the beginning, even then, a new light was sown for the righteous, a promise that your light would become the catalyst first for order and then for hope. Author of language and light, help us to use words as you have, to cast light into dark waters and draw out justice and truth. Baruch atah Adonai Yotzer HaMa'orot. Please turn to page 231. Love your neighbor as yourself, you said, and light blinded we saw. That inner and outer worlds are one, as you are one. You spoke and we wrote, we reached for you down the centuries, your light moving before us. As we climbed, fell back, and climbed again, your Sinai of life. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher ba'amo Yisrael b'ahava. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Blessed is God's glorious majesty forever and ever. Please be seated. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levacha u'b'chol nefshecha u'b'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi nuscha hayom al levavecha v'shinatam levanecha v'yidabarta b'am v'shivtecha bebetecha u'vrachtecha b'derech u'shachcha u'kumecha u'kshartam le'ot ha'yadecha v'hayu l'tetafot b'neinecha u'ktavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'v'lisharecha le'man tizkeru v'asitem kol mitzvotai v'hiyatem kedoshim le'lechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem asher hosei etchem ve'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem. And please turn to page 239. Please read responsively. The eternal truth is that you alone are God, and there is none else.
May the righteous of all nations rejoice in your love and exult in your justice.
Let them beat their swords into plowshare and their spears into pruning hooks.
Let nation not lift up sword against nation, nor learn war anymore.
You should not hate your brother or your sister in your heart.
The stranger that sojourns with you shall be accepted as your equal, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt.
Why do you crush my people and oppress the poor? Asked God.
We know that the Eternal One defends the poor and holds the rights of the needy.
Praise to God Most High.
Blessed is God and deserving of us.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar bekodesh, nora tehilot osei feleh, nora tehilot osei feleh. Shira chadasha shebechu golim lishmacha el sifat hayam. Yachad kolam ha'odu v'himlechu v'yamru Adonai imloch, Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed. Sor Yisrael koma v'ezrat Yisrael ufta k'namcha Yehuda v'Yisrael Go'alanu Adonai Zevot Shemo Kadosh Yisrael, Baruch Atah Adonai Ka'el Yisrael. Please turn to page 242, and if you are able, please rise. Pray as if everything depended on God. Act as if everything depended on you. Adonai siftam titach ufi yagi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzhak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Hasadim Tovim, Ukanonei Hakol, V'zocher Hasadei Avot v'Imahot, U'mevi Galang Libnei B'neihem, L'ma'an Shemo Ba'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Mashiach U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Abraham v'Yezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechaye hakol atah, Rav Mashiach, Morid hatal. Mechaye Chaim b'chesed, Mechaye hakol berachamim rabim. Somech noflim u'morfeh cholim, u'matir asurim, u'mekayem u'menato le'shenei afar, mi chamocha ba'el kivorot, u'midmon elach, melech memit u'mekayem, u'masmiach Yeshua, v'ne'eman atah halon hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Hayeh hakol.
נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וכרוך אל זה ואמר, קדוש קדוש קדוש, אדוני צבאות, מלוך כל הארץ כבודו. אדיר אדירנו אדוני, אדוננו אדיר שמך בארץ. ברוך כבוד אדוני במקומו. אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו מלכנו, הוא מושיענו והוא ישמיענו, ברחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור. הללויה. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד גוד לך. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד גוד לך. תנו לנצל את צקים, קדושה לך Tish, Tirashani Chana Tish, Veshiva Elohim Meipinu Lo Yamush, Leolam Leolam Vaed, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Nagid God Lecha, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Nagid God Lecha.
Baruch atah Adonai ha'el hakadosh. Please be seated as we turn to page 250.
Yismehu v'malchutecha, shomerei, shomerei, shomerei Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Yismehu v'malchutecha, shomerei, shomerei, shomerei Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Mekadeshi shevi Shabbat, kulam yizbehu v'yitargu mitovecha Shabbat. Yismehu v'malchutecha, shomerei, shomerei, shomerei Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Yismehu v'malchutecha, shomerei, shomerei, shomerei Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Zechir למעשה בראשית Shabbat. Zechir למעשה בראשית Shabbat. וישמחו במלכותך, shomerei, shomerei, shomerei Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. ישמחו במלכותך, shomerei, shomerei, shomerei Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat.
Please turn to page 253. We offer thanks, O God, for this Shabbat which unites us in faith and hope, for Shabbat holiness which inspires sacred living, for Shabbat memories glowing even in darkness, for Shabbat peace born of friendship and love. We offer thanks and blessing, O God. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh ha-Shabbat. Find favor, Adonai, our God, with your people Israel, and accept their prayer in love. May the worship of your people Israel always be acceptable. God, who is near to all who call, turn lovingly to your servants. Pour out your Spirit upon us. Our God and God of our fathers and mothers, on this day of Sukkot, be mindful of us and all your people Israel. For good, for love, for compassion, life, and peace. Remember us for well-being. Amen. Visit us with blessing. Amen. Help us to a fuller life. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai hamazir shemchato l'Zion. Please respond with Modim Anachnu Lach, which means we give you thanks. For the expanding grandeur of creation, worlds known and unknown, galaxies beyond galaxies, filling us with awe and challenging our imaginations. For this fragile planet Earth, its times and tides, its sunsets and seasons. For the joy of human life, its wonders and surprises, its hopes and achievements. For human community, our common past and future hope, for oneness transcending all separation, our capacity to work for peace and justice in the midst of hostility and oppression. For high hopes and noble causes, for faith without fanaticism, for understanding of views not shared. For all who have labored and suffered for a fairer world, who have lived so that others might live in dignity and freedom. For human liberties and sacred rights, for opportunities to change and grow, to affirm and choose. We pray that we may live not by our fears, but by our hopes, not by our words, but by our deeds. Blessed are you, Adonai, your name is goodness, and you are worthy of thanksgiving. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha u'lecha na'ah
Sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, tova u'bracha. Ya la 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 la, ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la, ya la la. Sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, tova u'bracha. Ya la 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 la, ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la, ya la la, ya la la.
Please pray silently.
Turn now to page 362 for our Seder Kriyat Torah, the section for the reading of the Torah. At this time, I would like to call up Saul's grandparents, Susan and Alan Platt, and his mother, Linda. Please come up and stand by the ark. I'd like to call up Gil Polishok and David Lusignan for the Ark opening, Irene Foster for the undressing of the Torah, and David Foster for the holding of the Torah. Page 362.
En kamocha Elohim Adonai, ve'en kemaasecha, malchutecha malchut ha'olamim, u'memshaltecha bechol dor v'dor. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Adonai yos le'moiten, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom.
Please rise.
Aharohanim, eitiva v'irtzalecha et Zion, tibne chamat Yerushalayim, tibne chamat Yerushalayim, ki b'chol levad batachnu, melech el ram v'nisa Adon olamim.
Eitz Chaim means our tree of life. In just another day, we will celebrate the reading of this Torah year after year, because it is taught from parents to children. It is passed down now to 3 generations. And this scroll is the secret of our people's life from Sinai until now. Its teaching is love and justice, goodness and hope. Freedom is its gift to all who treasure it.
Ki mitzion et etzei Torah, ki mitzion et etzei Torah, u'devar Adonai mirushalayim, baruch shenatan Torah, baruch shenatan Torah, le'amoy Yisrael, b'kedushato, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai echad, echad Eloheinu, gadol Adonenu, kadosh Shemo, gadol Adonai itin, rememosh mo yadav. Yeah.
The Torah reading for today comes from the portion for the festivals, and we read from chapter 23 of the book of Leviticus. We start off with Shabbat, and then we move to Passover, and then we move to Sukkot, the festival we're in now. So we begin on page 823. Yamdu Avram ben Velvel v'Chava v'Shana Pesha bat Salik v'Fuma la Torah Rishonim. For the first Aliyah, call up Alan and Susan Platt. Baruch Adonai Habarach V'Olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah. Keep going.
Baruch Atah Adonai Elohim Melech Olim Asher Bakar B'Kol Mikol Amin V'Nos Alano Ketol V'Tol Baruch Adonai Ha'no Torein HaTorah.
Amen.
וידבר אדוני אל משה לאמור, דבר אל בני ישראל ואמרת עליהם מועדי אדוני אשר תקראו אותם בקרי קודש עליהם מועדי ששת ימים תעשה מלאכה וביום השביעי שבת שבתון מקרא קודש כל מלאכה לא תעשו שבחים לאדוני בכל מושבותיכם אלה מועדי אדוני מקרא קודש אשר תקראו אותם במועדם בחודש הראשון ב14 לחודש בין הארבעים פסח לאדוני.
Blessing after the bottom.
Baruch Atah Adonai Elohim Melech Olam Asher Olam Atei Baruch Atah Adonai Notein HaTorah.
Amen. Watch. There's steps right there. Yamdu Chaim Rachmiel ben Label v'Shoshana v'Meir Rabat Dvora La Torah Sheni. The second Aliyah, call up Howard Ressel and Maddie Levy.
Baruch Adonai Habarach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Ehel Melech Olam Asher Bakar Banu Mikol Amim Natan Lanu Torah Emet V'Chayei Olam Natan B'Tocheinu Et Torato Baruch Atah Adonai Notein HaTorah.
Amen.
ובחמישה עשר יום לחודש הזה חמסות אדוני 7 ימים מצות תאכלו וביום הראשון מקרא קודש יהיה לכם כל מלאכת עבודה לא תעשו והקרבתם אישה לאדוני שבעה ימים, ביום השביעי מקרא קודש, כל מלאכת עבודה לא תעשו.
Baruch atah Adonai, Ehel melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam na'atah b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai notin haTorah.
Amen.
I lost my place.
That's fine. Come on, come down.
Oh, I found it.
יעמדו יוסף בן יואל ומינה וחיקה בת בנימין לתורה. For the next aliyah, I call up Yossi Lee and Arlene Jabla. Baruch et Adonai.
Baruch Adonai, Hamavorach Elam Va'ed.
Baruch Lilam Va'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bocher banu mikol ha'amim, v'notan lanu es Torato. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen.
וידבר אדוני אל משה לאמור, דבר אל בני ישראל ואמרת עליהם, כי תבוא הארץ אשר אני נותן לכם, וקיצרתם את קיצרה, ויאהבתם את עומר, ראשית קיצרכם על הכהן.
Blessing after. Blessing after.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam na'atah b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
We need help with that mistake.
I'm all right.
Let me help.
No, I'm fine.
Yamdu Ilan ben Ruven v'Tzipora v'Shena Eliza bat Gedalia v'Elisheva LaTorah Revi'it. For the fourth aliyah, we'd like to call up Ilan Adar and Halle Friedman.
Baruch et Adonai havo'ah.
Baruch Adonai Hamoach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai havo'ach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
והניף את העומר לפני אדוני לצונכם, ממחרת השבת יפנו הכהן. ועשיתם ביום הניפכם את העומר כבש תמים בן שנתו לעולה לאדוני, ומנחתו 12 שנים סולת בלולה בשמן אישה לאדוני, ריח ניחוח זכייה יין רביעי ההין.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu torat emet, v'chayei olam nata betochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Tamod, Layamina Bar Avram Avram V'Shena Feshid La Torah Chamishid. For the fifth Aliyah, reading of the Torah. Call up Linda.
Baruch Hu Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Bachar Banu Mechol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
V'dober Adonai El Moshe Lemor, Daber El Bnei Yisrael, V'lemor, I think I lost my spot, I'm sorry. I think you do. Oh, no.
My mistake, not hers. We're starting that over.
V'dober.
Let's take it back. We're on page 827, verse 33.
V'dober Adonai El Moshe Lemor, Daber El Bnei Yisrael Lemor, V'hamisa Shvi'i, no, I'm not sure that it is. V'dober Adonai El Moshe Lemor, Daber El Bnei Yisrael Lemor, V'hamusa Asar Yom LaChodesh Hashvi'i Hatzechad Hasukot Shivat Yamim L'Adonai B'yom Harishon Mikra Kodesh Kol Mechet Avodah Lo Ta'asu. Start me off, I'm so nervous. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tzalchenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Sorry. You okay? First, I want to say thank you to Sal's birth mother, Rosa. I pray for you every day, and you are always in my heart. Sal, you are a firecracker. Every day you shoot up into the sky and burst out into a billion points of light and noise and joy and beauty. Once, someone asked me what my goal in life was for you, and I said, I just want him to be a mensch. But even as the words came out of my mouth, I knew it was the wrong goal. You were already a mensch. Your kindness is renowned. You won Mensch of the Week at Hillel 9 times in 2 years. At school, you have stood up to others, letting them know that racist behavior is not okay.
When a horrible incident, don't be ashamed, be proud of who you are. When a horrible incident happened in New Zealand, you came together with your community and stood bravely outside the mosque, guarding our friends and sending a message that violence won't happen on your watch. You have risen above the designation of mensch. You are on your way to superhero. You are shalom with the power of Torah to change the world. You don't need to shoot webs from your fingers or have amazing equipment to be a superhero. Your strength, my son, is in your heart. Throughout this year, I have gathered words of advice for you. Keep on poking holes in the darkness. Light up the night. Build bridges, never walls. And have the courage to tear down walls, brick by brick. Show up and stand up. Make sure everyone has a seat at the table. If the table isn't big enough, build a bigger table and speak for those who are unheard. Speak the truth, even if your voice shakes. Black and brown lives matter. You matter. Always have kindness in your heart, never hate. No matter what the difference is between you, those are your words. No one is free until we are all free. Joining hands and walking through the desert all together is the only way out. We are all one people, one race, and no matter how you believe, it's the same God. And God is so much bigger than the boogeyman. Even if you have nothing, take half of your nothing and give it to someone else who also has nothing. Maybe it's still nothing, but at least you'll have a friend. Love is love. Science is real. Feminism is for everyone. No human is illegal. Temper your dove with your hawk, and temper your hawk with your dove. Always use your words, and if you must fight, fight for peace. Walk softly on the earth and use only what you absolutely need. Pray as if everything depends on God. Act as if everything depends on you. I know you'll be a great superhero because at your right hand, you have your Uncle Jerry, of blessed memory, to guide you. At your left, you have our friend Henry Blumenfeld, also a blessed memory. And behind you, at your back, you have me and you have all of us. We got your back. I love you 3,000. Love you back. Love you back.
Okay.
Love moms.
Stay here, stay here.
Don't leave me hanging. Okay.
And now we call the Aliyah becoming bar mitzvah.
Yamad, 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 Yamad. Shalom Ephraim Binyamin ben Leamina. Habachur bar mitzvah. Hazak, Hazak, Hazak. Linit Hazek. Hazak ve'ematz.
Baruch Hu Adonai Hamvorah.
Baruch Adonai Habarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorah Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten ha'Torah.
Amen.
Shivat Yamim Takrivu Isha L'Adonai Bayom Hashmini Mikra Kodesh Yelachem Yikratem Isha L'Adonai Asereti Kom Malachet Avodah Lo Ta'asu Eilem Modei Adonai Asher Tikreu Otam Mikra Kodesh להקריב אישה לאדוני, עולה ומנחה, זבח ונשאים דבר יום ביומו, מלבד שבתו אדוני ומלבד מתנותיכם ומלבד כל נדריכם ומלבד כל נדרתכם אשר תיתנו לאדוני. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Yamod, Amaviyat Amod, Agolelet. I'd now like to call up Frank Spitolnik to assist with the lifting of the Torah, and Sandra Griffin to assist with the dressing of the Torah. Please rise now in honor of the Torah. The Haftarah for today from the prophet Ezekiel, because this is the middle day of the holiday, is found on page 1443. 1443 in the book of the Torah. Saul will begin by chanting the blessing before the Haftarah, and then the Haftarah and the blessing after.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'navim tovim v'ratza v'divrei hanamarim b'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'torah u'Moshe avdo u'Yisrael amo v'nviei hamet v'tzedek v'haya bayom hahu bayom bogog almat Yisrael ne'um Adonai Elohim talech amati ve'api ukanati ve'sharvarti divarti imlo bayom hahu yehieh rash gadol al admat Yisrael v'rashu mipanai degei hayam ve'ol hashamayim ve'chayot hasadeh ve'chol haremes haremes al hadamah v'chol ha'adam asher al pnei adamah v'neresu heharim v'naflu hamadrigot v'chochama la'aretz tipol v'karati alav l'chol harai cherev ne'um Adonai Elohim cherev ish mechiv tihiyeh v'neshpat patati ito v'demer udam v'geshem she'of avnei al gavish esh al gavrit amatir alav v'al amayim rabbi masher ito v'hitkadeshti v'nuoti le'enei gayom rabim v'yadu ki ani Adonai Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Sor kol halamim, sadik bechol hadarot, ha'el ha'ne'eman ha'omer ve'oseh, ha'medaber v'mekayem, shechol devarav emet v'tzedek, al ha'torah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al ha'navim ve'al ha'shabbat hazeh, shenatan lanu Adonai Eloheinu, Likdusham limnucha lechavonu letifaret al hakol Adonai Eloheinu anachnu modim lach urechim otach yitbarach shemcha befi kol chai tamid le'olam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai mikadesh haShabbat Amen.
Now turn back to our prayer books to page 374. This time I'd like to call up Henry Schottenfeld and Christian Green to assist with the ark opening. I ask those who are able to please rise. Hallelu et Shem Adonai ki niskav shemo levado. Let us praise the name of Adonai, for God's name alone is exalted. Please be seated. Now Saul has his Devar Torah that he will share with us.
Shabbat Shalom and Chag Sameach. Hi, my name is Saul, and this is what my Torah portion is about. The verses I chant are from the portion Emor in Leviticus chapter 23, verses 1 through 9, and 33 through 38. In the first Aliyah, the Torah talks about the holy days, which are fixed times for God. So first we talk about Shabbat. For 6 days of the week, work may be done, But on the seventh day there is complete rest. It is a holy day, and you should do no work. It is a day that is celebrated for God wherever you live. The next Aliyah describes Passover, which starts in the first month, the 14th day at twilight. There is a Passover offering or a sacrifice to the Eternal. And then on the 15th day of that month, there is a feast of unleavened bread, or matzah, which you eat for 7 days. And for 7 days you make sacrifices to God, but we don't do that anymore. Now we offer God our time and prayers. The first day and seventh day are sacred occasions, and you do not do any work, just like Shabbat. Next, God tells Moses about the celebration of Shavuot. This will happen when the children of Israel enter the promised land. At the first harvest, they will bring the first of your harvest to the priest. He shall present it to God as an offering on the day after Shabbat. Also, you shall bring a lamb, an offering of flour with oil mixed in, and some wine. Today, my mom chanted the Aliyah that introduces Sukkot. She read that God spoke to Moses, saying to the Israelites, "On the 15th day of the 7th month, there is a feast of booths that lasts 7 days. The rules for the first day are the rules of Shabbat that I chanted in the first Aliyah. The last Aliyah I chanted says that 7 days you bring offerings by fire to God. And on the 8th day, there is also a sacred occasion. On that day, you do not work because it's a holy day." What I know about Sukkot. People live in the sukkah for those 7 days. It's made out of wood and it's covered with branches of leaves. You have to make sure that there are holes between the branches so that when you sleep in there, you can see the stars. You have to have a meal in the sukkah. It's like a sacrifice in a way. In a way, the whole thing is a sacrifice because you're not in your house. You're living in something you don't usually live in. Part of Sukkot is using the lulav and etrog. You hold them together and say the blessing and shake them up, down, left, right, and in back. Why? You do it because you are feeling happy that God is all around you. Holy days mean happiness and spending time with your family. Thank you all for coming to my bar mitzvah to celebrate with me. I'd like to thank all my teachers from Hillel School, TBK, and Temple Sinai, and Ellen Goldenberg, Alana Dar, and Hallie Friedman. I also like to thank my grandma and Gigi, and especially my mom. Chag Sameach and Shabbat Shalom.
It's now my pleasure to call up Carla Greenfield from our Board of Trustees, who will make a presentation to Saul on behalf of various organizations and the congregation and board.
Awesome job.
Thank you.
It gives me great pleasure to be the first one to wish you a mazel tov on becoming a bar mitzvah this morning. On behalf of the Board of Trustees and the entire congregation, I offer you our congratulations. Now, since you and I first met at Volmer many years ago, I recognize that you really embody the values of Judaism, like Kehillah, your commitment to your community, compassion, inclusion, and tikkun olam. You've raised money for the water for Sudan, and you volunteer here for Sinai Sprouts. I know you will continue your commitment toward Jewish heritage. So I have some gifts for you. In this envelope is a certificate that states that you have become a bar mitzvah here at Temple Sinai today, a $250 gift certificate from Nifty towards a future team trip to Israel, a certificate providing a grant from the Farish Institute for Jewish Education to also participate in a future teen Israel trip, a certificate from the JCC for a complimentary one-year membership for yourself, a $540 certificate for the Jewish Federation of Greater Rochester's Gift of Israel program. And then from our congregation is a Kiddush cup, which we hope will bring memories of this important day whenever you use it on Shabbat or Jewish holidays. And I also have a book, Torah, a modern commentary, that we hope will be a source of continued Jewish learning in the years ahead. I look forward, Saul, to seeing all the wonderful things that your future holds. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I hope you're as proud of yourself as we are of you, because you are fantastic. Saul, you did a great job, and you couldn't have done better. I could have done better if I found my place in the Torah. So Saul, I know you're well aware that during the festival, because you taught us about it, Sukkot, it's also called the Festival of Joy. We're told to rejoice, which is actually unique to this holiday. It's the only holiday it says rejoice. It's also a harvest holiday that is filled with traditions as well as a great deal of symbolism. We're commanded to dwell in the sukkah, as you said, and take the 4 designated species, the etrog, which is a citron, the lulav, which is a palm branch, the hadas, which are myrtle branches, and arvei nachal, the willows of the brook. We shake them in all the directions, indicating not only the happiness that God's there, but that God is there, and we bless them and we offer thanksgiving for the abundant harvest and blessings that we receive in life. While celebrating, we extend our hospitality by inviting others, both symbolic ancestors and flesh and blood guests, to join us for our meals in the sukkah. These are the concrete activities of the holiday, following a much more contemplative prayer and soul-searching day of Yom Kippur, a day spent striving for tshuva, repentance, and atonement. Now, Sukkot also has a similar theme of seeking repentance before God amidst the joyful celebration. If one analyzes the festival, though, we see paradoxes and striving for balance, things that sort of go in the opposite directions. Here in our society, many of us offer our gratitude for the abundance of the harvest. Yet we are well aware that in too many parts of the world, of the country, and in this very community, there are those who suffer from food shortages and even famine. Technically, on the 7th day, which is called Hoshana Rabbah, we beseech God for rain by adding an addition to the tefillah prayer. You were the last one to lead us in service to ask only for dew. Starting on Hoshana Rabbah, we start asking for rain. We are well aware of how essential and life-giving water is, yet we see too many places that suffer from drought or water contamination. Think of this, Saul. Our bodies are made up of 80% water, and we're born in a sack of water. The symbolism of water begins with the story of creation in Genesis. It's found in the Garden of Eden, which has a river that breaks into 4 branches as it comes out of the garden. Water is the core of this Noah story, and Moses, remember him? He's rescued from a basket in the Nile. The first plague is turning water into blood. And when we depart from Egypt, we cross the Red, or the Sea of Reeds, not the Red Sea. But Moses' downfall is when he strikes the rock and brings forth water. Jewish rituals include multiple uses of water, right? There's a mikvah, which is a ritual bath. People use it different times, whether for ritual purity or conversions. A ritual bath like that is very important. And the symbolic washing of hands before we bless bread. Now, in the Moses' story, there's a paradox of water, in that he is both saved from the water, but it's also its water is causing his downfall, which makes him unable to enter the promised land. So Saul, you know, rain is essential for life. Although we're really happy it's sunny today, let me tell you, after a couple of days of it. The crops need it, but the benefits can be limited when there's too much of a good thing. Yes, it's life-giving, but also destroys life with floods, tsunamis, hurricanes, and seas that rise above safe levels. On Sukkot, We stay in a fragile structure covered by a roof of branches, you explained. One needs to be able to see the stars, as we have experienced this year, though we can be soaked by the rains. There were numerous pictures, I don't know if you saw any of these, of Sukkot that were totally messed up and destroyed by the rains and the wind. So our aim is to offer gratitude for the abundance that we have, and knowing very well that others are not as fortunate as we are. Indeed, we are commanded to rejoice and be happy while sitting in a fragile sukkah, which symbolizes the tenuous nature of life and all its vicissitudes. Our goal, though, Saul, is to balance our joy with the harsh realities that many experience. Rabbi Rina Arshinoff reminds us, quote, "How do we handle such paradoxes? Paradoxes take us out of our comfort zone and cause us to squirm. It is not so easy to praise God for what we have at the same time that we see others suffering from hunger. We praise creation, yet we destroy our environment. We preach about compassion, goodness, and welcoming of others, but we also see wickedness and closed natures around us." Another theme, though, Saul, found in Sukkot is unity. Our ritual of holding the four separate species together and waving them in all the directions is a very strange one for Judaism. It almost looks paganistic, yet it offers a wonderful metaphor of unity as they are held together. We teach that they can represent four different types of people. One with a lot of learning and no good deeds, or few good deeds. One with a lot of good deeds but very little learning. Another person with both learning and good deeds. And finally, a fourth with neither. The description of these four are also representative of parts of the body. The lulav is the spine. The etrog is the heart. The myrtle branches look like eyes. And the willow's leaves look like lips. Sukkot and these interpretations remind us of the paradoxes of life. It's our sacred task to balance the differences and inconsistencies in our attempts to repair the world around us. Arshinoff describes it as follows, quote, "Be like a tightrope walker. Finding balance requires hard work, concentration, and believing we can do it. We're responsible for maintaining the world in a healthy way, to recognize the fragility of life and the fragility of the world that God created, through balancing the differences between those of us who have and helping to provide for those who have not." Now there's a teaching in the Talmud. It declares that all Israel should dwell in the same sukkah. Now according to Rabbi Eliezer, that means an individual, each of us, should stay in the same sukkah during the festival. We shouldn't move from sukkah to sukkah, which is the opposite of sukkah hopping. But they really mean don't live in another sukkah. You can visit another one, it's okay. But there's another interpretation, as there are for so many customs, and that is that the entire people of Israel should be in the same sukkah together. A little crowded, but here's what it means. It's a concept of unity of our people rather than each one staying in their own sukkah. Think of it this way. If we are symbolically all in the same sukkah together, there's a spiritual message of unity. Together we become more aware of the needs of each and every one. Those with different levels of fortune are united as one people. Now Saul, today is the 6th day of Sukkah, so 6 and 15 is 21. 21 days ago, we heard what sound? We heard what sound on Rosh Hashanah? We heard the shofar, right? The shofar is there to alert us that it's time to concentrate on repentance and teshuvah. And we can use the various rituals and symbolic messages of Sukkot to alert us for something else. Seek out balance in life, some presented to us in the contradictions in the world around us, as seen through the holiday. Let's act compassionately towards the stranger and other issues in our world as we welcome all into our sukkah, our Sukkat Shalom. Like that name? Shalom? The sukkah of completeness and peace. Our unified efforts will strengthen the world, bringing us to a greater sense of unity as we rejoice in this sacred time of the year. Amen. Now, Saul, I'd like you to come up here and receive a blessing. It's a blessing for you to keep, and it's a blessing that has your name in it, right? It's a blessing that's very special, and the more you use it, the more it will grow. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and watch over you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chunecha. May the light of God shine upon you. May God be gracious to you. Yisad Adonai panav elecha v'yisem shalom. In the presence of God, we lift it up to you. May you be blessed with peace. Now, there is a custom that they're following today. It's not our usual custom here, but it's a custom that when we sing Simon Tov and Mazel Tov, we don't throw at the bar mitzvah boy, we toss near the bar mitzvah boy. Oh, we need a moment to pass them out, so that we pass out. Let's sing the Shekianu first, then. After we can.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהחיינו וקיימנו
Now begin our concluding prayers for the service as we turn to page 586 with the second paragraph on that page. We rise for the Alleluia. Think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died this season in years past, and those we have drawn into our hearts with our own. This Shabbat we extend sympathies to all who mourn the recent deaths in the period of Shloshim, the first 30 days of mourning, Roberta Rubin, Michael Wexler, the father of Kevin Wexler, Margie Roth, the aunt of Nancy Cantor, and Ralph Pincus, the father of Josh Pincus. We also remember the yard sites, the anniversaries of the deaths of Marilyn Berman, Jay Browse, Rosetta Delheim, Ethan Diggory, Niazi Ege, William Gerard, Margaret Jerby, Seymour Ginsburg, Louis Golub, Joseph Gorin, Ben Jacobson, Leo Kanner, Otto Kraus, Hyman S. Levin, Dorothy Lisson, Belle Lovenheim, Barbara Grace Merlis, David Namias, Carol Newman, Annette Newman, Lloyd Paperno, Dorothy Pies, George Ruth, Milton Rosen, Isabel Rosenblum, Leonard Rubin, Julie Rutberg, Esther A. Schwartz, Fania Shablaya, Samuel Silverman, Barney Snyder, Jerry Spitolnik, Anita Stein, Ruth Schifrin Strauss, Jay Walsh, William Zimmerman, and Myron Zuckerman. Are there any other names of recent deaths or yard sites?
Cousin William Horn.
Zichronam Livracha, may their memories all be for blessing. The mourner's Kaddish is found on page 598. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'alma divrach yirutei, v'yamlich malchutei, v'chaye echon v'yom echon, v'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'gala v'zman kariv yimru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach v'olam u'lalmei omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei kudusha b'richu la'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran b'alma v'yimru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromah, uyaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'al kol yoshvei tevel, v'yimru amen. May God who creates peace in the heavens above, let peace descend on us, on all Israel, on all humanity throughout the earth, and let us say, amen. Please be seated, but I invite Saul and Linda up to the bima as we bless the challah and the wine. Okay, we're ready for our closing song. We'll turn to page 625 as Saul leads us in Adon Olam.
Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, Leit Nasa, V'hayt Sokol, Azai Malach Shemon Nivra, Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, Leit Nasa, V'hayt Sokol, Azai Malach Shemon Nivra, Adon Olam, V'acharei Chilot Kol, Levadon Yoknara Adon Olam, V'hu Haya וחצוקו. אזי מלך שמו נקרא אדוני, והוא אחד ואין שני, והון שילה ואפירת אדון עולם, בלי ראשית, בלי תכלית, ולא אדון והמשרה אדון עולם, אדון עולם, אשר מלך, בטרם כל, יציר נברא, לעת נשא, וחצוקו. אזי מלך שמו נקרא אדון עולם, והוא אלי וחי גולי, וסורי ויצרה אדון עולם, והוא ניסי ומנצוץ לי, ונתפסי ביום אקרא אדון עולם, אשר מלך, בטרם כל, יציר נברא, ועת נשא, וחצוקו. אזי מלך שמו נקרא אדון עולם, וידעו יפקיד רוחי, ועת תישן נקרא אדון עולם, ואם רוחי גביתתי, אדון אלוהים יקרא אדון עולם.
Please rise for the closing benediction. Adonai ozni amo yitain, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. Eternal God, bless our people and all people with strength, the strength to build together a world of peace. Shabbat shalom. For those celebrating, please go into the social hall. Open the door.
How are you?
How are you? I'm like that.
You should have gone to school.
For a second.
What a boy. Spelling? Spelling?
I'd like to get a start. Yeah. Once I have that.
I'm going to be on your birthday.
I went outside once because forgot his president in his car, so I walked outside. This is Gil Push.
He used to come on Saturday mornings. No, you didn't. Somebody asked me. Well, I did it, Henry. Yes. I did it.
Hi. Excuse me.
I practiced the look that I expected to do. It's my look of absolute annoyance.
So I go up over and past
And one block after Jefferson, the left is Tony Road, and the first left is Tony Court. A lot of Tony Road is Tony Court, is Tony Court. But he's not screaming like this. And the first one on the left.
Well, I would pass Toby, because she was past, way past Jefferson. But we're off of Clover, but by the Harvard School, so closer down.
Oh, yeah.
So that works.
Well,
So we just figured out the right.
I haven't sold my house. I just moved to that house.
Oh, did you? Where was the other one?
In Brighton. However, my 37-year-old youngest child was having a problem that she had no one to come home to. Everyone goes, it's 20 years since her father died. She should be over it, but it's not. It's about the thought of not having a I mean, she's 37 and she lives in an apartment in Boston. And my kids are old. But we're all good. They're all employed. Nobody has a loan. And I moved to my new house. I didn't take any furniture with me. I just went to dump it all. It's 48 years old. I don't need it anymore.
Well, our house is bigger, so now I'm having trouble furnishing.
Well, I'm going home.
So it's the opposite. It just really.
Well, I didn't downsize by any means.
So you did that.
But I bought new furniture. I got my other sectional waivers. And then I got some things in West Town just because I needed to modern, not in 1974. There should be food in there.
Whatever she needs. I don't know if it's my psychological.
I thought maybe there'd be
I don't know what's the matter with me. I just, all right, safe travels.
Thank you, dear.
What?
Thank you, and I'll see you when I get back.
Yes, you will.
Danke sind.
Shabbat shalom. I'm believing.
Oh, yeah, we should go, yeah. Well, I'm going over to Chateau to see the pricing. I want to go over, I wrote this, I said, why are we using people because we're going to deliver? I said, first of all, Chateau is local, and we should maybe advertise in the so people will know who's down there, and the food is wonderful, and if we need to live, I said, I don't mind picking it up, and if we need to live, I'm sure we will deliver. I don't understand, because this Mary business, taking us over something that's not her business, I don't know. Well, if she, what's the, she doesn't want to reimburse, I'll put the charge number, have it on file, the same way they have to do it. She doesn't want